When my family moved out of the house a month ago, my dad came across this book. This is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, and I had never heard of it before. The weird thing is that my dad hadn't either. We both assumed that the other one had bought it back when we still lived in the US. I immediately started reading it, and what I found was a captivating story, a tragedy of a man dominated by fear and anger. This book talks about a lot of things, from colonialism to religion and tradition, but what I want to focus on in this video is what it has to say about masculinity. The story of Things Fall Apart follows Okonkwo, a man of great success. He's known throughout the 9 villages for his personal achievements, such as fighting in 2 intertribal wars and being a great wrestler in his youth. He has 3 wives and several children. He's described as a big, strong man who walked as if he was always ready to pounce, and indeed, he pounced often when a lesser man drove him to anger. He hated weakness, passivity, and the effeminate. For all intents and purposes, he was the archetypal man of his society. He started from nothing, and through great force of will, perseverance, and hard work, he built for himself a great yam farm and compound. He went from rags to riches by tooth and nail. His father Unoka had been the exact opposite. He was lazy and debt-ridden, and when he passed away, he left his family nothing. While he was alive, his only loves were drinking palm wine and playing the flute. He had big debts, but would spend any money he got on drink. By most metrics, Unoka was a failure. Growing up with a father like that impacted Okonkwo strongly. In fact, many of his traits, both good and bad, stem from Okonkwo's fear of becoming like Unoka. Yes, it's good that Okonkwo gets great satisfaction from building things up, taking control of his life, and striving to be the best at something, but that's not the only way he goes against what his father was. Unoka was effeminate, so Okonkwo has to be hyper-masculine. Unoka feared the sight of blood, so Okonkwo fights in 2 intertribal wars and even brings home a severed head. Okonkwo looks down on womanly things and uses femininity as an insult towards people he sees as weak. He treats his wives and children horribly. They fear him, as angering him usually leads to physical violence and threats. There's a scene early on in the book where Okonkwo almost shoots one of his wives because she took some leaves from a banana tree without permission. Okonkwo embodies many masculine ideals. His strength, bravery, and determination have led him to be a great warrior who is respected among his peers. Like I mentioned before, in his youth, he defeated the strongest wrestlers in fights that impressed even the elders. When he was starting out his life as an adult with nothing to his name, floods and droughts did not stop him from growing yams to provide for himself and his family. Nonetheless, it's clear to me that he suffers from toxic masculinity. That term gets thrown around a lot, so let me clarify that it does not mean that masculinity itself is toxic. As we can see in Okonkwo, masculinity gives him the tools to succeed in wrestling, farming, and being the provider for his family. However, certain aspects of his masculinity, when taken to their extreme or left unexamined, bring harm to himself and others. This is especially noticeable when we are introduced to Ikefemuna, a young boy from the village of Mbano. Some men from that place killed the wife of an important man of Umofia, the village where Okonkwo lives, and in order to avoid a war, Mbano has to give Umofia a virgin and a young boy to pay for the crime committed. The virgin is to replace the wife. We can see here a bit of the way the culture treated women as property, but no one knew what to do with the boy Ikefemuna. Okonkwo asks if he can take him, and they allow it for the time being. The oracle will decide the boy's fate later. Okonkwo has a son named Nwoye, who quickly befriends Ikefemuna. They do everything together, and their friendship is a positive influence on each other. In a short time together, they grow and improve. This bond that they develop helps make Ikefemuna feel like a part of the family. He even starts calling Okonkwo father. However, Okonkwo didn't bring Ikefemuna just for his boy to have someone to play with. His goal is for Nwoye to learn how to be an honorable man who can grow the manliest crop, yams. Okonkwo teaches both Nwoye and Ikefemuna the process of farming yams. In an effort to kill off the spirit of laziness that he sees in Nwoye, he threatens and beats them if they make a mistake. The kids learn, not with the carrot, but the stick. Okonkwo uses violence as a tool for teaching. Nwoye and Ikefemuna did not just learn how to farm yams, however. They also start to adopt some of Okonkwo's sexist attitudes. Nwoye especially wants to live up to the masculine ideals that his father has set, so he enjoys being asked to do masculine tasks around the house. In fact, when his mom asks him to do these things, he feigns annoyance with women and their troubles, something he almost certainly learned by observing his father's treatment of his wives. We see in Nwoye a desire to perform masculinity. Almost every man has lived this, whether or not they were aware of it at the moment. I don't know if the desire is innate or learned, but it's there. When you're young, you don't have a deep understanding of gender, performativity, or sociology. What you do is you learn by observation and mimicry. It's not that kids can't think for themselves, it's not monkey see, monkey do, but they lack the tools to really analyze behavior and make informed decisions. They copy the things that they see in the men around them, their father, grandfather, uncles, older brothers, etc. Nowadays, you also have to factor in media and how men are portrayed there. There's a reason that there are many calls for positive male role models in movies and TV. We want growing boys to learn how to be men, but what we disagree on is what men ought to be. For example, should men be allowed to cry or be vulnerable? In our modern life, where women are able to earn their own money, what is the role of the man in the house? Is he still the one and only provider? Or is a switch to a more egalitarian role better for the family? What should a man even look like? Does physical strength still matter in the expression of manhood now that fewer jobs require it? Moreover, how does class, race, and disability factor into masculinity? Can there be more than one way to be a man? If you ask these questions to 10 people, you'll get 11 different answers. As much as we'd like strict definitions that explain the complexity of the world, man is not etched in stone. Hell, even what men are allowed to like is a contentious issue. We could see a bit of that in Things Fall Apart, where Okonkwo encourages the boys to listen to his stories of war and violence. Nwoye listens intently because, in his mind, stories like these are what men should care about. Being a warrior should be something to be strived for, respected, and admired. Despite that, he still prefers the stories of his mother, where animals behave in human ways and teach moral lessons. He doesn't express this preference, though. Why? Because he wants to please his father, and he believes that to be a man, he must prefer stories of violence. For those who don't know, I was an art teacher, and I noticed in a few students an assumption that art was more of a feminine hobby. Not everyone thought this, and the boys who love to draw and paint never really thought of what they were doing as subversive for their gender. However, the belief was still there, and it manifested in there being more girls who drew than boys. Why is that? Well, one possibility is art's tie to emotions. One of the main functions of creating art is being able to express your feelings. This opening up makes you vulnerable and is considered unmasculine. How many times have we heard the phrase, men don't cry, despite the fact that grief is a part of the human experience? I mean, sometimes it feels like men aren't allowed to express any emotion other than anger. We can see this clearly with Okonkwo's relationship with Nwoye and Ikefemuna. Does Okonkwo tell Nwoye how proud he is to see his son grow as a person? Does he show Ikefemuna how fond he has grown of him in the short time they've been together? No, because to Okonkwo, masculinity means suppressing your emotions. Emotions are weakness, and weakness is feminine, and to be feminine is to be like his father. He is determined to rid himself of any bit of Unoka that might be inside him. One day, after Ikefemuna has become part of the family and was like a son to Okonkwo, the oracle decided what must be done with the boy. He must be killed. Ezeuro, the oldest man in Imofia, tells Okonkwo, "That boy calls you father. Do not bear a hand in his death." The advice falls on deaf ears, however. Under the pretense that they would take him back to the village, several men take Ikefemuna to a forest, and Okonkwo follows along. Once the trees surround them at every turn, a man strikes Ikefemuna with a machete. As the pain vibrates through his body, he cries out, "My father, they have killed me." He's asking for help from his parental figure, but Okonkwo doesn't want others to see him be moved to compassion. He refuses to be seen as weak and feminine. He panics and in a split decision deals the final blow, slaying the kid he saw as his own. Deep down, he knew that this was wrong, but he betrayed his own feelings because performing the role of a strong man was more important to him than doing what was right. He suppressed his emotions, he hid from them, and when the time came, he didn't know how to handle them. He responded the way he understood, with violence. Even afterwards, he considers his depression and shock to be woman-like behavior and focuses more on distracting himself from his feelings than confronting the fact that he's done something horrible and is remorseful of his actions. Sometime later, there is a funeral for Exile, the man who had warned Okonkwo not to participate in killing Ikefemuna. During the ceremony, in the last salute, Okonkwo and several other men shoot their guns in unison when suddenly a cry of pain shouts out. It turns out that Okonkwo's gun had exploded and a piece of metal shot out and killed a 16-year-old boy in the crowd. This was a fluke, a complete accident, but a crime was still committed. As punishment for this, Okonkwo and his family are exiled for 7 years. That's where I'm gonna have to cut it for this week's video. Next week, we'll explore more of what Things Fall Apart has to say about masculinity, with a focus on what Okonkwo's son Nwoye and his daughter Zinma can tell us about alternate forms of masculinity. In the next video, I'll also talk about my favorite scene in the book, the one I'm currently painting right now. So if you want to hear about it and see the completed artwork, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment to support my channel, and I'll see you all in the next video.